So another A2A roundtable today, and joining me always, Reed Meyer, our co-founder. And today we've got Brent Benner on the show with us. He's got a wealth of knowledge about enrollment and all kinds of awesome things. So without further ado, I'm not gonna, steal his thunder. I'm gonna let Brett kind of introduce himself. So Brent, why don't you jump in and kind of give us your background, let us know where you're from and who you are.
hmm All right, sure, Ryan. Well, thanks for having me. And currently, I'm an associate vice president for enrollment management at the University of Tampa, Tampa, Florida. We're NCAA D2 scholarship granting university, and we're in probably the toughest D2 conference in the country from top to bottom. But uh, prior to my entry in, being a college administrator, I was in the pro sports business where I had kind of unusual niche. I career coach professional athletes, and what that involved is I would help athletes with distance education programs, and I would help them, get internships in the off season, and I would help them when they would blow out their knees, elbows, whatever, make the transition from sports to the real world. And I was really the only person who did this. I kind of started this field and we did a lot of work for really across industries. I mean, even in professional boxing, but we probably did most of our work in the NFL and NHL. Um, my partner and I, my partner Lindy Lowe, the company was called Benner and Lowe, and we did a lot of work for the players' unions in helping athletes, and we actually got it written into the collective bargaining agreement for the Professional Hockey Players Association in 1996 that the union had to pay for career coaching for hockey players when they retired who wanted it, and then in the NFL, although we did do work for the NFLPA, NFL is a little bit different, and that most NFL teams have what are called player programs. And there's usually somebody assigned to that player program who's supposed to assist, like the rookies that they hire or free agents that they sign who are, not used to Kansas City, for example, the players program for the Kansas City Chiefs, which I did a little work with back in the day. They would try to acclimate the players to Kansas City as well as their wives too, and then help them get engaged with the community. And our business was based in Chicago, which was very convenient because it allowed us. I mean, we still had to travel. The travel was horrific with what we did, but being based in Chicago, it was a lot easier because with all the different sports teams in Chicago, Major League Baseball and NHL, NFL, teams would usually run through there. NFL, we would usually work with them at their facility because obviously NFL teams don't have a lot of time on the road to meet and things like that. Their travel is all business, and they're only traveling, if you exclude the playoffs, 8 times a year. But it was very convenient for especially hockey, NBA, and baseball players who are usually spending a night either before or after their game, which gave us time to meet. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's a little bit about that type of business. And then obviously my expertise I'm able to use in the college arena. In fact, my last university was an NAIA school that we totally revamped athletics there. And then plus I'm also a dad of 4 kids, and 3 of my 4 kids did collegiate sports, men's ice hockey, men's track and field, cross country, and women's basketball.
Sounds like you've been pretty busy, really helping out athletes, whether they're your own athletes in your house or athletes, spanning across the globe. So that's really awesome. Like I said, we're really happy to have you. And I think Reed's got some questions for you. So Reed, I'm going to let you kind of tee it up and ask him some of the great things that he knows about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brent, I kind of want to dive into the enrollment side of things a little bit. I think that, for a lot of the student athletes that we work with and our demographic, I think they're either A, intimidated by it, or B, don't think it's important. I think a lot of kids in our world assume, hey, sports are going to get me where I need to go. The admissions office is just something I kind of have to go through and check the boxes on in order to get to where I'm trying to go. What I would love for you to take an opportunity to just sort of showcase the benefits of really building a relationship with an admissions counselor and sort of going through that process on the enrollment and the admission side as an athlete. What kind of difference that can make to either be involved or not be involved in that process as you look at that school for athletics.
Yeah, that's very important. In fact, I'm embarrassed to say, Reed, that I thought that the three kids that did athletics concentrated way too much on communicating with the coach and assistant coaches and not enough time. Also, dealing with their advocate on the academic admissions side of things, their admissions counselor. So I think they really ignored their admissions counselors as resources, and it was a lost opportunity for them. Because you really have two advocates when you're looking to enter a university if you're a student athlete. And that would be the coach, number one, and then the admissions counselor, number two. Because I know, I'm in enrollment management. I work very closely with all the coaches. In fact, just have meetings with, oh gosh, men's golf coach, men's lacrosse coach, women's basketball coaches this morning. So the interface there is pretty heavy, but that would be my advice, to make sure you don't blow off the admissions counselor. But to point something else out about the academic side of things that I think high school athletes forget. They think that their athletic prowess is going to get them in the door. But I always, when I do kind of student athlete prep events, I always point out, I give them an example. I said, I want to give you an example. If I'm a coach, right, and I have a scholarship budget, I have an athletic budget, and I only have so much in that budget. Let's say I've got, $100,000 scholarship money in that budget, and I have 2 point guards, and they're both really good, and they're both almost identically equal, great personalities, great kids, but one of the kids has a 3.6 GPA, and the other kid has a 2.8 GPA. So the kid with the 3.6 is going to be bringing in a $12,000 merit scholarship, whereas the other kid, who's just as good as him, is bringing in zero. Now, what do you think I'm going to do as a coach? Well, how do I compare those two? Well, if I want to give him a full ride, $40,000 scholarship, I only have to give that one kid, what, a $28,000 scholarship? And then the other one, I've got to blow the whole wad on. So it becomes very simple. And plus, who am I going to get? Am I going to get somebody who's shown more discipline in the classroom, less likely to flunk out? Am I going to recruit somebody who shows more discipline in the classroom? I get evaluated not only by my athletic director, but by the president of my university and the NCAA on the grade point average of my team. So what's going to be a bigger liability? So you can see that both go hand in hand. Coaches are really pretty selfish when it comes down to their budgets, and they want, if they've got a kid who could bring in money from elsewhere in the university, why not use it? So that's why I think kids need to keep their eye on the ball of academics, because they're going to be a more attractive athlete to the coach. And again, they can use that admissions counselor to handle things on the admissions side, even additional scholarships maybe that the coach may not know about. Who knows?
Yeah, no, and I'm so happy you said that and we got to that point, because I was going to say, I think a lot of times, and we find that we do this as well, there's a bit of an uphill battle, you feel like sometimes, with some kids that we talk to, where they have this understanding of athletic scholarships where everything is through the lens of a Power Five football or basketball program, because that's what we see 99% of on ESPN and Fox and things like that. So everyone assumes that it's just sort of going to materialize out of nowhere. And exactly like you said, being a competitive student makes you a more likely recruit because of all the reasons that you listed. It's amazing what that can do on the athletic side. And for these equivalency sports, which is 95% of the sports that we're dealing with up and down the board, yeah, the less coaches can spend, the better. I mean, it works out better for them, and it makes you a more appealing athlete. And like you said, I mean, kids nowadays, especially with the ability to recruit nationally, I mean, those margins for the differences in the talents is so slim that you're looking for tiebreakers in any situation. And that money aspect, I feel like, has to be a pretty big one, especially for, not to, non-revenue generating sports, especially.
Right. Yeah. No, and you're right about the margins, especially in the stopwatch sports, as I like to call them, like swimming and track. I was just talking. There was a swim recruit on our campus the other day from Colorado, and he and his dad were talking about that, how the time margins of the NCAAs are not, from D1 to D2 are just not that great. And you see that in track and field, cross country, anything like that too.
And I'm curious, so on the other side of this, looking sort of, we've talked about how admissions can certainly help you. I think another thing that we want to address as well is on the other side, I think a lot of athletes assume that, oh, I'm this good at this sport or this coach really wants me. I don't really have to care about my grades. I'm going to get my flag. I'm going to get taken care of. Now, that may happen more or less at some larger athletic programs and things like that. But by and large, in the admissions process, what kind of impact does that student athlete status have on your overall admissions application process?
Well, it's important. If somebody's a recruited athlete, we try to work with the coaches to help support them and get their athletes in. And and plus we flag certain athletes. Like I'll say to the coach, this young lady wants to study biology, and she's gotten C's in chemistry. She got a C in advanced algebra and trig. It's probably not going to happen. Why don't you try to talk her into changing her major? So we can get the kids set up for success. So you can kind of look at the transcript and see how we're setting a kid up for success or not. But it's very hard to get around certain standards at universities. It really depends on the university. And I'm sure you guys are aware, the Ivy League has their own little standards that people have to make. You can't even get on the dance floor with a team unless you meet certain standards. But it's not only like that at the Ivies, it's like that at many other schools. But yeah, we always try to work with the coaches. And I know that you guys don't specialize in music or theater arts students, but it's treated very, very similarly. Universities typically treat musical theater arts, art students like that because they're talents. There's certain students that go to universities that are bringing in talents aside from academic talent. And those are the athletes, and those are the, quote, talent-based majors. So yeah, but we always try to work with the coaches. I mean, our job is really to help the coaches and help the students to make sure the students that are getting recruited can be successful.
Yeah, well, I like the way you phrased it too, the successful aspect, right? I mean, there's a difference between getting into the university and then putting those kids in a position to have a fruitful college experience as opposed to just putting them through the ringer or putting them in some corner where they're not going to be able to get anything out of the degree plan. So I appreciate that that's something that's part of the process.
It's funny though, when you and I, or when the three of us are talking about this, so think about like the one and done schools, like, what's University of Kentucky? What's their mission? Well, you know what their mission is, to try to get the guy to the NBA. So is that necessarily bad? Well, I don't think so. That's the way the system's set up. So until something changes, hey, maybe now the NCAA won't exist 5 years from now.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it's going in that direction occasionally. Day by day.
By the way, how are your guys' job applications going for that position, the president of the NCAA?
We were actually just working on Reed's the other day. We're going to submit his first to see how it goes.
I can promise you I at least care more than Mark does about the student athletes. So I feel like there's, we've at least got that part down.
That'll probably disqualify you.
Kind of what it feels like right now.
He cares about the athlete. I don't know if we can have this guy in here, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Brent, like all these things are great, but everything, like anything else, there's got to be growth, right? And when you first kind of stepped into this realm, what did things look like, and how have you seen them change over the years?
The college realm you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the pandemic has just turned everything on its head. That's been the biggest change I think that I've seen. Well, there's been a couple changes, and I'll just look at my snapshot of time here at sorry, I've got an Amber Alert going on here.
No worries.
All right, I'm done with that. But what the biggest things that I've seen are, first of all, like the movement forward of the recruiting process, like for volleyball players, women's volleyball, it's just crazy. I mean, these kids are getting recruited as sophomores, and they're locked as juniors. So it's pretty nutty. And it presents some interesting challenges for the volleyball coach, because like the volleyball coach he'll try to do guesstimates of somebody's like tuition and fees and costs, but it's very hard to do that 2 years down the road. So the coaches, kind of put me in this dilemma is into, guesstimating what our tuition fee, which actually is pretty easy at Tampa. We have very consistent, um, raises in tuition, which are pretty minimal, but other universities, that's not the case. So that's one thing that I've seen, though, the movement up of certain sports. And then the big change is this just massive bottleneck of student athletes that currently exist in sports. And it's been heartbreaking for me just because I know what my kids went through, the work they did to be able to play intercollegiate athletics. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of discipline. But I see the last 2 years, I've seen these poor high school kids that just can't get in a team. I had a friend in Chicago whose son is an excellent basketball player. He couldn't even get a spot on a D3 team last year. So, I mean, I'm talking about last year, not this current freshman.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not even any better now, nor is it going to be much better next year. I was just talking again with our basketball and golf coaches, and it's that bottleneck is still there, that extra year for COVID. In fact, our coach, Joe Urso, we have an incredible baseball team. In fact, I think we're ranked #1 in the country currently. We'll make a run at the NCAA championships. Anyway, our coach's son is a great baseball player. He's a shortstop. And he was affected by this. And he told me he's going to be graduating and he's got 2 years left. 2 years. And you know how baseball works. You got to hit that junior year, really. That's when you're going to get drafted. So he's going into a graduate program, which, a lot of students have done in the past 2 years, right? They've got that extra year. So they're going to be graduate student athletes. But he even said, if I don't get drafted, I may try to look for another graduate program here at Tampa. So, but what about the poor kids who are current seniors? You guys would know better than me because you're working with the students. It's a very difficult thing to navigate. And it's probably going to be 2, maybe even 3 more years before that logjam breaks. And that's provided we don't have another surge in a pandemic or something like that. Sorry, didn't mean to bring that up.
Yeah. No, I mean, you bring up a good topic though, because, and Reed knows this. I used to work in the wrestling space, and with wrestling and, many other Olympic sports, specifically wrestling, I was just at the NCAA championships and they put on the screen during one of the sessions that there were about 3 or 4 wrestlers that were in college for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. And that bottleneck that you talk about, it's very apparent and you see it. And one of the things that happened with one of those wrestlers was, or actually 2 of those wrestlers, is that they took an Olympic redshirt year. So you come in, you take your redshirt year, then you have the Olympic redshirt year, and then they got the COVID year. So they're in college from the time they're 18 to, almost 28, right? Because you're there for so long with taking these times off. How badly, and I mean, you just spoke to it a little bit, but how badly have you seen this really take off with a lot of these players and athletes that are just staying so long that it's creating like such a horrible logjam that now the financial aspect is starting to kind of, get a little bit dinged because of it?
Well, yeah, because I mean that's a great point, Ryan, because you're giving up earning potential in the workplace. What is the average? I think the average college graduate makes what is it now, like 48,000 a year. So think
Yeah,
about
about
a year.
50,000 a year. Yep.
So you're giving up. So that's basically 100 grand of lifetime earning power. But that's money that's going into your 401k that's going to help your retirement. So these things have implications when you're an old man like me. So yeah, you're right. Well, interestingly, and this is affecting every sport, Ryan. I mean, you're right, because look, I just noticed I'm a Packer fan, so sorry about that if you don't like that. But if it makes you feel any better, I'm married to a Bears fan, so I sleep in the couch all fall pretty much. There used to be a rivalry, but it's not anymore. Anyway, but being a Packer fan, I noticed they picked who did they pick? Devontae Wyatt. They picked 2
Mm-hmm.
from Georgia. And Devontae Wyatt, he was affected by that. You know how old Devontae Wyatt? He's 24 years old. The Packers drafted a 24-year-old defensive tackle. So you think he's ready to play in the NFL? I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be going through puberty anymore. But think about that, Kenny Clark. I mean, that's good now for the Packers, but what about 4 years down the road when you got a 28-year-old guy to re-sign. And think about like Kenny Clark, they drafted him, he was 21 years old. Big difference.
Yeah, certainly a huge difference with, just when these guys are coming out of college and, going on to that next level if they're good enough to make it, right?
Right.
Now, we talked about the growth, we talked about the logjam, and one of the things that you kind of spoke about with your own kids is that they spoke more to their coaches, or at least the coaches that were recruiting them, more than they did with, enrollment or
Mhm.
anyone on the academic side. What are some of those other mistakes and pitfalls that you've seen students make as they're being recruited and trying to get into these colleges and universities?
Well, kind of ignoring the grade factor throughout their course. I mean, that's one big thing, but we've already covered that. I think, uh, and kind of another one up front that they do, and and it's not really their fault because I don't think the student athlete or their parents know any better. They get a really bad advice from certain coaches who are acting in self-interest, especially in the AAU realm and the like. And I'm not damning all AAU coaches because my kids have had some great ones and they've had some, people that have no business coaching anybody in their AAU. But the common theme, and I think any parent I mean, some of my kids were really gifted athletes when they were young, and my two others who played college sports, they worked their what off to make it a college sport. They were hard workers, but you see how they're treated differently by coaches. Anyway, the one thing they make is they get this pressure to commit to one sport. You got to commit to one sport. You got to commit to one sport. Well, I'll tell you what, I've met a lot of NFL players. I have never met an NFL player, and I know they're out there, but I've never met an NFL player that didn't do track. I mean, even the big guys, for the footwork, or a lot of them wrestled. Ryan,
Hmm.
I know a lot of NFL linemen that told me, I wasn't really a very good wrestler, but the footwork that that I got from wrestling really helped me. It really helped me. So, and what's ironic is of my four kids, all my kids were athletes, but out of my four kids, the one who specialized in one sport was the one who never uh, played in college. I never got a college offer. And she was more prone to injuries because she was doing the same sport all the time, all year long. And she tore her adductor muscle. And I think a lot of it was because she was just doing one sport, soccer, soccer, soccer. My other kids have played all sports, um, you know, probably were better equipped physically because they weren't doing that repetitive injury type stuff. Plus, you learn different things from different sports. I mean, your vision in hockey, that going that fast. If you play hockey, moving that fast, that vision. When you slow it down in soccer or basketball, I mean, it's still fast in soccer or basketball, but not compared to, somebody's skating 22 miles an hour this way and another guy's skating 22 miles an hour that way. So all these sports, they help you in ways that you'd never think about. I mean, there's a reason why you go in most NFL locker rooms, they have ping pong tables set up there. Why do you think they have ping pong tables? Sure, these guys are competitive and they like to mess with each other, play ping pong. It's for their reflexes, right?
Hmm. Do you see, that it's a kind of a detriment for athletes that come in that they don't have those extracurriculars, right? They're a one sport kind of a person, or do coaches tend to like that, where they're solely focused on that one sport that they're recruiting them for?
I don't think the college coach really cares. I think the college coaches are pretty savvy and they know their best athletes are multi-sport athletes. I mean, over the course of time, there's no question. I mean, you guys know how long can you coach any team at any university and not see who your best athletes are? And they're the ones who do multiple sports typically.
Mhm.
So I don't think a college coach really cares. They're really looking to see what kind of talent you're bringing in. And I think it depends on the sport. A lot of lacrosse coaches tell me, and I mean good lacrosse coaches who've won NCAA championships, have told me that they said, Brent, I could take a football player or a good hockey player and I could turn them into a lacrosse player because that same kind of athleticism in football and hockey is what's used in lacrosse. So it was kind of interesting. So I think it depends on the coach and how much coaches want to develop. I mean, you're aware some coaches only go after transfer students. They want the quick fix transfers. Other coaches, no, 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 they don't want transfers. I mean, they'll do it here and there, but they'll want to develop their own, keep their own pipeline going. So I think it really depends on the coach.
Mhm.
But I think really probably one of the biggest mistakes kids make is letting their mom and dads talk for them, letting their mom and dads email the coach. I mean, people need to step back and do a reset, and a kid needs to remember, and the parents need to remember, what is going to college? It's an adult game. Do adults let their mommies and daddies speak for them? No, they don't. So my wife and I never, ever emailed, called, communicated with any coach or any admissions counselor when our kids went through the process. Because you know what? If they can't email a coach or they can't pick up a phone, call a coach, maybe they shouldn't be going away to college anyway. That's kind of how my wife and I viewed it. But that's why that's what coaches want. They want self advocates. They want adult self advocates. And if your mom's doing all the talking or your dad, coaches don't like that stuff. They don't want to hear the dad tell how great, they know everybody's kid's the greatest. They go to the toughest high school in the United States. Did you know that? Mike goes to the toughest high school? Yeah, at least he didn't go to the crappy school my kids went to, thankfully. But so kids, if they advocate for themselves and send emails, and I think the other mistake students make is they think that every coach is going to know who they are out there. They just magically they're going to know it. No, you need to market yourself. You should figure out what university you want to go to. Don't wait for the coach. So you can just have a basic copy paste email. Dear Coach so and so, I consider myself a very good lacrosse player from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm interested in studying cybersecurity, and I know your university has that. Could you, this is a copy of my resume, and I'd like to see if there are any possibilities of pursuing collegiate athletics and the lacrosse team at the University of X. And then you send it to the next one, send it to the next one. Another thing I think, so you really need to market yourself. And then another thing I'm sure you hear parents and students say that, well, I emailed the coach 4 times, but the coach isn't communicating with me. And I think to myself, yeah, the coach is communicating with you, all right. You're just not hearing it. You're not hearing it. So, you got to move on. There's a lot of universities in the United States where we have 3,000, or you would know, Reed, more than that probably. But anyway, there's a lot of universities, and you can just keep marketing yourself. And you think you're D1, D2, start marketing yourself to D1 or D2 teams, and see who bites. If nobody bites, then maybe you want to do D3, NAIA. So that's kind of, I think too often students don't realize that they can pick the university that they want to play for with an introductory letter. Because coaches, as you know, have to fill these teams. And they're not filling them all with blue chippers.
I'm trying to figure out how we can give you a job offer right now. I feel like that was such a beautiful, it was like my subconscious just came out and spoke. It was beautiful. It just, and I love that it came from somebody in the admissions world who you see this and you talk to coaches and you know this. I think a lot of times there's this expectation, this understanding that oh, well, my kid's different. I feel like we hear that a lot of my kid is different. And that's not to say your kid isn't special. That's not to say your kid isn't awesome, but there's hundreds of thousands of kids that are playing this sport, and there's only, like you said, a few thousand universities. So it's impossible for a coach or anybody else to just find you out of the blue in most circumstances. So there should be no shame in pursuing schools that you care about and reaching out. I have to believe, and I'm sure you know this better than me, coaches want to be wanted, I'm sure, in those situations. If you have a player who is competitive and wants to come to you, I'm sure that makes that communication pattern way more positive than them trying to find you in some strange capacity.
Yeah. Plus, think about it. You email a coach and the coach never calls you back. You probably wouldn't want to play for that coach anyway, would you? It's like pursuing a girlfriend or boyfriend. If they don't return your call, you kind of figure it out, don't you? But the coaches that do call you back, you're kind of seeing how they manage their team in action. 48 hours, I got an email back from this coach who said, yes, I'm interested. This is what I'd like you to do. That says something. That shows that you've got a good marriage perhaps going on. And so You mentioned one other thing, Reed, about extracurricular things, and does that hurt you? Because it does. Athletes aren't able to do always the community service that, I mean, I still think athletes can do community service. I don't buy that, but that they can't do any. But they don't have the time that other students do to do things like that, or they certainly don't have the time. They don't have an option to be an orchestra, band, chorus, things like that, or it's very difficult, put it that way. But I do think it hurts them at the Ivies, students like that. Because I do think the Ivies look for those unusual students who really have what I call a trifecta. Sorry, I'm a Louisville grad. I like, especially with Derby coming up, I like these horse racing. But the trifecta, what I mean by that, and when I look at who gets into the Ivies and who the Ivies choose for their athletic teams, they really are the players with, solid academics, solid athletics, but they've got something else too. Many of them are like first chair trumpet player, or they were in their school play. I mean, I've been on scholarship review committees, and you think, God, where did these kids come from? But there's a lot of them out there that really can do it all. Those are the kids. If you want to go to an Ivy, it's probably going to be tough if you don't take care of that third, like kind of art, outside performing arts, just kind of that other. But aside from that, I think most people understand that student athletes are putting it all out there in the field as well as in the classroom. And there's only so much time in the day, right? You have to eat and sleep. If I recall, when I was in my athlete, ate and slept a lot.
Yeah, generally.
I'd actually eat twice because I went to crappy high school in the south side of Chicago, but I was a really good runner. And when my buddy Cliff he was a hurdler, and his dad owned a bar and restaurant. So when we'd be done with practice, I'd go home. His family ate at 5. So, and he was an only child, so I'd stop at his house. I'd eat dinner there. And then I'd go home to my family. My dad was a college track coach, so he didn't get home till like 6:30. We didn't eat till 6:30, 7. So I'd go home and eat 6:30 or 7. Right? I had a great thing going on then.
No kidding. That's the system figured out right there.
If I did that now, I'd weigh 300 pounds. But boy, did I have my metabolic rate. Woo!
I am just at the precipice now, I feel like, on my roller coaster of life, where now I will eat things and I feel it, which is such a bummer. I wish I could go back like in 3 years and just abuse that privilege that I had when it came to nutrition.
Yeah, welcome, Reed.
Yeah, you can't eat. Of course, you're a wrestler, Ryan. I wrestled in high school too, and what I did in high school, they would probably put my coach in prison for now.
Yeah, the non-eating, the lack of eating that went on as I grew up a wrestler.
Yeah,
I would not recommend to anyone. But I tell you what, I wish I still had that kind of metabolism, because it was, Reed. That's why I say welcome, because I'm a little bit older than Reed. I'm already there where I work out just because I know that if I eat that cheeseburger, I'm going to feel it for about a week until I feel like I've actually worked it off. So welcome, Reed. It's not as much fun over here. It takes you a little bit longer to get off the couch, but when you get there, you're there.
Yeah. And you only need to remember 4 words, Reed. Eat less, move more.
Exactly. When I remember to do that, I feel a lot better. So I think I need to probably make that part of my general routine. Yeah. Well, Brent, I've got one more quick question for you, and this is more just kind of curiosity based on your own personal experiences as a parent of college athletes. I think a lot of my parents did it. I have to imagine that Ryan's parents did it to a certain extent. I think it kind of happens across the board. You get into sort of this keeping up with the Joneses mentality a lot of times when it comes to your kids, right? You're watching other people get recruited or committing or whatever it might be. And when you're in that space and you're operating sort of at that level of competitiveness at the youth and the high school level, it's hard not to sort of start to tunnel vision a little bit and to kind of look away from the other aspects of, obviously we're talking about in the space of college here, the major you're going to get, the area you're going to be at, the network you're going to build, all these different things, because this coach is talking to me. It might not be the right fit for me anywhere else, but this coach is talking to me. That's an opportunity to play sports. Is that something that you struggled with as well as a parent, sort of going through that process with your kids, or given sort of the context of what you've done, obviously with the career coaching and enrollment now, was it easier for you to sort of have a baseline of like, okay, we need to make this decision holistically and not just focus on the coach of the week or the coach of the month?
Yeah, I mean, even my kids have a little of that hero worship. I think where it's worse, where kids start losing their focus, I think hockey is. I mean, having been through that process and seeing your kid. Uh, I mean, at the time, my kid was kind of unusually, just because he was a big boy and a pretty good hockey player, was recruited by some D3 schools before going to junior hockey. But then, of course, like all North American boys, you want to play junior, get my pro contract. So that my oldest son was probably the least disciplined in high school and had his mind on hockey and nothing else. But eventually, when after 2 years of junior and no pro contract, when you're a lost 21-year-old, then your life changes a little bit. Then you're scared and you got to go to college, and all your friends are looking at almost finishing college and you haven't even started yet. So I think hockey boys and girls get kind of their minds swayed off the right road. But I do think students, sometimes focus on the wrong thing versus like the holistic college, really looking at the best college. I won't name the university, but one of my son, uh, who ended up running track at Tampa, which was the right fit for him. But he was recruited by a lot of D1 schools to run track. And there was this one school, a very big ACC school, but with a kind of crappy distance group. But he was very enamored because their coach who was recruiting him was also an Olympic coach. It wasn't his event, but she was trying to, shore up her distance thing, and he didn't want to, be a member. When push came to shove, it ended up that he forgot about the Olympic coach recruiting me thing, and then started thinking about running in the doormat of the ACC for 4 years for cross country. So he decided to go to a good D2 school, and make it happen there. So, and again, the nice thing about certain stopwatch sports, that like track and swimming, I mean, if you excel, you can qualify for the Penn relays or Drake relays. We have kids do that all the time at Tampa. I mean, generally in track, you run in the Florida relays. They don't care if you're D1, D2. It's all about qualifying times. And likewise with swimming. We've had one of our swimmers, Alex Hetland, won the NCAA D2 championships, and then he swam we've had a lot of Olympians here at Tampa. They go back to their home country, and then you see them in the Olympics. It's pretty cool. But Alex won the European championships after leaving. He went to a D2 school. He won the freaking European championships, 50 meters swimming. So I think that a lot of times kids getting back to your point about, are they with their blinders or what are they looking at? They chase the D1 thing instead of thinking through their college experience and what that's really going to be like. I see a lot of transfers here at Tampa. We make a living off transfers from really kind of tier 2 D1 schools that people have never heard of before, and they're in godforsaken locations. And then students know the student is letting the D1 drive them versus my lifestyle. I got to go to college for 4 years. I got to work my tail off being a student athlete. And I want a decent lifestyle with that. And so I think they start thinking of that. But that's something important to think about. I really do. I see so many kids make that D1 mistake when it's not all it's cranked up to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I mean, yeah, I went and visited the University of Tampa in March. That's where you and I met, and it's hard not to go visit there and want to maybe live there. That's a pretty good place to be.
Well, maybe we'll have you visit in July, and then we can change your mind.
Texas native, so I get it a little bit, but
okay.
That humidity might be a little bit different.
You're from Texas, so you know the beat down heat. There's heat, and then there's beat down.
Yeah, exactly. Brent, one more quick question for you on that point, though. Your son that you mentioned that played hockey and was a little bit later in his life, timeline, whenever he sort of had that, oh shoot moment. If you wouldn't mind, if I remember correctly, can you tell me what he's doing right now? After having sort of that re-identification issue, I guess you could say, as an athlete. I would love to just for kids to know, this is a trajectory you can take even at that point in your life.
Yeah, well, I mean, hockey just served this kid incredibly well. I mean, he went over to, I mean, when he played at University of Tampa, which was ACHA, but then he went over and got his master's degree at University of Oxford in England. And the oldest hockey rivalry in the world is Oxford-Cambridge. And Oxford has an incredible hockey team. Unfortunately for them, they only have one Brit on it, at least when my son played. They're almost all Canadian, Eastern European, Russian, American. So, but playing for Oxford, he got to play all over the world. In fact, just 2 years ago, he was playing in Kiev. Well, I guess it was 26 months ago. He was playing in Kiev, Ukraine. So hockey, he's played all over the world with Oxford's team, and then he's going to graduate school at Johns Hopkins, which is CHF, Collegiate Hockey Federation. So he has eligibility there, which he finally burned. So he was able to play for Hopkins, and he's getting his PhD in computational biology there. So he didn't get hit in the head too many times to get CTE to affect his PhD experience there.
I love it. Yeah,
But there
just
is
using
hope.
sports to create those opportunities is awesome.
Yeah. So any of you parents who have, and I should add that my son got most of my kids were great students, but my hockey playing son, he got a D in high school algebra, and he's getting his PhD in computational biology at Johns Hopkins. So do you think there was a discipline issue there? I always say to kids, I can't tell how smart you are from your grades, but I can tell how disciplined you are from your grades.
I know exactly how that is. I have an English degree and I had C's in English all throughout high school until I got to college and they were like, you don't have to tell us what we're telling you, just like speak your mind now. So I get it. I completely understand. Maybe it was a discipline issue with me. I guess it took me all these years to figure out I was just really undisciplined when it came to English.
Well, hey, now I'm nervous when speaking with an English major, wondering what grammatical errors I'm making.
Oh, trust me, I make them all the time, and I'm also an editor too, so I see horrible mistakes on a daily basis. You're completely fine.
Thus
A lot
far.
of them come from me and my blog, so you're in good company.
Funny.
Yeah, you guys are all good. This has been a ton of fun. Want to wrap up, but Brent, we can't thank you enough for joining us. Do you have any other little nuggets or anything else that you want to leave us with before we end with you today?
Mm, the only other thing I would say, there is a nugget I'll end on that I think is important for student athletes to remember. And coaches always tell me that when they recruit kids, they said, there's three things I look at when I look at a recruit, because there's three things that they can really help my team with. Obviously, number one is, can they help my team in the field of play? But number two, can they help my team in the classroom? Are they going to be disciplined and get good grades? And are they going to help my classmates get good grades? Their classmates get good grades, because that's what happens. These teams, athletic teams, are just giant fraternities or sororities, right? I mean, that's all they are. Or except their track teams are giant fraternities and sororities at once.
Yeah.
But that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, and students forget that when a coach looks at you, they're going to say, can this kid help me recruit? Can this kid help me recruit? So they look, is the kid, that's where they look. Is their mommy and daddy talking, or can they walk and chew gum at the same time? Can they carry on a conversation with an adult? Because if they can, I may need them to carry on conversations with some of my recruits' parents. Also, maybe they're different. Maybe they need maybe they're the only African American on their team. That can help the coach recruit if the coach needs and wants more African Americans on their team, which most coaches do. So those are the three things. Can you help me in the field of play? Can you help me in the classroom? Can you help me recruit other students? Because they have to stay in somebody's room, right? And that's what my daughter figured that out when she realized every recruit was staying in a room. So anyway, those are the hopefully I've given some of the listeners things to think about and to hone in on when they go through this process.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
this has been great. It's been awesome. I honestly wish I could as painstaking as the process was for me going to college, I kind of wish that I could listen to this and go do it all again, right? I mean, I'm sure everybody wants another shot at being a college athlete here, so I'd
Would you
probably be first in line to do that.
would you do it as a synchronized swimmer though, Ryan, or as a runner?
Um, I would probably go back and be a golfer instead of football. I think that's where I would probably check the golf box instead of the contact sports that I played growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, I know going to a country club, getting paid to or getting to golf for free. I know whenever I go to my class reunions, we always give the golfers a rough time at my old high school class reunions. We go, you people were incredibly smart. Go to a country club after school golf while we have to friggin' toil, get hit in the head, and run 9 miles.
Yeah,
Uh, anyway. Except golfers do not have it easy in college. I actually think it's one of the hardest things to do in college because you have to leave your university, walk 18 holes, come back to your university, then you get to go to class. That's a lot of
yeah,
time. Golf in college is not an easy time management sport. Probably one of the most difficult.
for sure,
Yeah, no
for sure.
kidding.
All right. Well, it was
Yeah,
great speaking with you guys. Thanks so much for having me. Really enjoyed talking
this
with
has been great. We really do appreciate it. Reed, I'm sure, it kind of echoes the same fact of this was awesome. A lot of really great knowledge came from this, and I can't wait to get this out there. So, I appreciate it. We're gonna let you go. Thanks for the stories. Thanks for all the wisdom. Thanks for telling us about your experience. It's been awesome. We'll definitely be in touch because, as Reed said, he's probably drafting up an offer letter for you right now.
you. Yeah, right. No, it was great talking with you guys too, and keep up the good work. It's so important, the message you're giving because you just can't read this stuff in books that you're delivering to people. So thanks again for doing that. And it's good for
Thanks,
parents too, because as a parent, Reed, people are going to listen to you guys versus mom and dad.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Brent. This was an absolute blast.
You guys take care. Have a great weekend.